Good morning. I just wanted to start by saying a massive thank you to everybody who has been so encouraging and kind, offering words and prayers to me as I accepted the training course to be a reader in September. I really appreciate the help in developing this way of me serving in church. So, you get me again today. I am totally a morning person. So like a 6 a.m. start is no problem for me. I'm way better first thing than I am late at night. By mid-afternoon, I need a coffee to keep me going. And it's really not happy days if I'm up after 10 o'clock. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. Or maybe you're a bit of a night owl, so are you best at midnight and you could gladly sleep in till 10? Or are you way more in your groove in the evening and you struggle to get going in the morning? Whichever one of those you are, we all have a rhythm to our day, don't we? There are times we're really productive and times we need to take it easy and rest. And our years have got rhythm as well, haven't they? There are holiday seasons, so schools have terms. Even the Christian calendar that we follow as a church has got a cycle of different segments to it. But what about our week? The fact that we're here today shows that we fit in this gathered time as church into our rhythm each Sunday. I think most people, even those who have absolutely nothing to do with the whole God-Jesus thing, would know that church meets on a Sunday and expect that to be part of our rhythm of life as Christians. So I wonder, for us, how does our established rhythm for life in every day, every week, every year inform or impact our walk with God? So we're in this series called Everyday People, which Matt started last week. As we moved from the 6 values of who we aim to be under Christ, we shifted the focus to what we do as disciples or learners of Jesus. As we think then about our rhythms in our everyday lives, I thought we could look today at the concept of Sabbath, the pattern of including in our week one day which we set apart for God and intentionally stop in order to rest in ourselves, rest with others, and perhaps most of all, to rest with God. Indeed, the word Sabbath is a transliteration of the Hebrew word Shabbat, which is all about ceasing, stopping, resting. Now, if I'm honest, I probably chose to delve into this because I really, really struggle with it. My personality and my upbringing means that my default is to be really proactive, to get stuff done, and my natural posture isn't to pause or let up, really. There's maybe an element of guilt involved for me with words like idle or lazy being far too quick to come to my mind and take front stage. So I'm hoping that this morning we can together tackle any negative connotations and challenges which might be our initial reaction to the idea of keeping a whole day a week which looks different. Then my hope is that we can learn together to embrace Sabbath as a beautiful gift from our loving God who wants us to flourish. So let's start at the very beginning with the creation narrative that we find in Genesis, specifically verse 2-3. We read, "On the 6th day, God finished the work he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the 7th day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation." So God had a rhythm from the get-go. He'd worked for 6 days, then on the 7th, he rested. So part of creation was the creation of a rest day. So alongside everything else in the created world, God factored this in. Everything he made was good, and so perhaps we can see a rest day as good too. We then see Sabbath appearing fourth in line in the 10 Commandments, the 10 laws or words given to the Israelites before they entered the Promised Land. They actually appear twice in the Old Testament. There's the Exodus 28, which reads, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy." Holy literally means set apart. So this is more than simply resting. It's to be different, not the same as every other day. And then there's the Deuteronomy 5:14. "But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall do no work." As we said, the Hebrew word Sabbath literally means to stop, not just taking it slightly slower, but stopping. I recently heard someone describe the difference in these wordings of the two distinctions, keeping it holy and not doing any work, as pray and play. And I found that really helpful. We can see Sabbath as both pray and play. Now, the 10 Commandments were a way of encouraging the people of Israel not to look back with nostalgia to their lives as slaves in Egypt. Matt mentioned last week, even though Moses led them out of slavery, the fact that they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years meant they sometimes pined for their old life in Egypt. But the 10 Commandments were designed to help them from reverting back to what they knew, their old ways. Now, as slaves, they would previously have been forced to work 7 days a week. The culture around them dictated that. However, with God, they were, as are we, offered another way. We could therefore perhaps frame our Sabbath as a way of helping us to avoid going back as well, back to behaviours or habits which aren't helpful, choices which are not in our best interests. It helps with the unlearning that Matt was talking about last week. I'm sure you can think of examples of that in your own life. For me, my example would be my tendency towards perfectionism, never feeling like what I do is quite good enough. I end up striving and working under my own steam to make me feel like it's enough. And I'm learning that Sabbath can be a way of me being released from that, accepting that it isn't all up to me, and that time with God and focusing on my relationship with Him is much, much more likely to bring satisfaction and peace. Another Old Testament passage which I think might help us to see Sabbath as a really positive gift to be embraced is from Isaiah 58, 13 to 14. "If you refrain from trampling the Sabbath, from pursuing your own interests on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the holy day of the Lord honourable, if you honour it, not going your own ways, serving your own interests or pursuing your own affairs, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride upon the heights of the earth." Now, I just want to pick up on one word in that passage, and it's used twice, and that's delight. Some translations of the passage use language like satisfy and enjoy. But in short, we can see Sabbath as pleasurable. We can be glad. I mean, I don't know about you, but if by Sabbathing I end up riding upon the heights, as it says in that last line, we might say, like, on top of the world, then I think I want a bit of that for sure. So that's some of the Old Testament foundations for the idea of taking a Sabbath day of rest to pray and to play. But as always, it's a good idea to look at what Jesus said, did or didn't do on any given topic. So there are plenty of examples when Jesus intentionally stops and spends time with God. He even slept through a storm despite what was going on around him. So I think that's an indicator for sure. However, I want to focus this morning on a passage where Jesus challenges what those around him say about Sabbath. And it's in Mark chapter 2. So let's watch a clip of that now.
One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields. And as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions." Then he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath."
So, as is the case so many times in the gospel accounts, we see Jesus challenging the religious leaders of the day, calling out their hypocrisy and where they've missed the point. The Pharisees' focus for observing the Sabbath was a legalistic ritual. Being seen to do the right thing was their motivation, irrespective of the intention or the attitude behind that action. And to me, this exchange between Jesus and the Pharisees serves as a reminder to us that if our Sabbathing isn't making us more like Jesus, then it might be something we need to think about. If we think back to the value series, Jesus calls for integrity. Does Sabbathing make us more open, kind, more honest? Does it create opportunity for us to be generous and inclusive? Just doing something in and of itself isn't what Jesus focuses on. It's whatever our attitude or intention behind it is too. So I think of that idea of following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. Again, following on from Matt's suggestion last week that there might be some things we need to unlearn. Perhaps for some of us, we've inherited an understanding of Sabbath a bit like the Pharisees. Maybe we see it as this demand from a God who might get angry with us, who expects us to stop doing anything we enjoy or indeed benefit from. Instead, perhaps God is calling us to relearn how, as one translation puts it, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of the people and not about people meeting the requirements of the Sabbath. So, if we try and put all of this together in a practical way, in the here and now, what might Sabbath look like for us at St John's Community Church in 21st century Burntwood? Now, I want to recognise and validate that in this room there will be a huge range of highly demanding situations in our lives, responsibilities, pressures, workload, requirements on our time. And I hope that we all appreciate that for one another, acknowledge those realities, and I believe God cares and sees all of that too. These responsibilities may well impact what a time of Sabbath looks like for each of us. For example, I'm married to a shift worker. He has to work some Sundays. He has to be on call and has to find other times in his rhythm of the week to stop and be with God. Some responsibilities are constant, like caring for an elderly relative or raising young children. So much so that even the idea of a Sabbath, a day of rest, might feel like a distant dream or an impossible aim. Sabbath is not easy or straightforward to carve out. a leading theologian, Walter Brueggemann, commented in his book, Sabbath as Resistance, that it requires enormous intentionality and communal reinforcement amid the barrage of seductive pressures from the insatiable insistencies of the market. So note communal reinforcement. Sabbath is a community endeavour, so let's support each other in this. Community here might mean us as a church, but it can also mean families, and maybe that's the clue for how we might possibly be able to rest in the midst of caring responsibilities, to seek to do it as a whole family, if at all possible. Whatever our community looks like, church, family, or something else, we can encourage one another as we all enjoy this gift of Sabbath. We can be generous in allowing our fellow disciples the pleasure of a day with our God, who loves us so much and wants us to flourish. So maybe that means offering other people some of our time if it means it will enable them to take some rest or time out to pray and play. Babysitting, sitting with relatives they're caring for, doing chores or shopping for them, being imaginative and intentional in the way we might communally reinforce the practice of Sabbath. In fact, if others in our lives see we do this, perhaps friends, colleagues, neighbours, it points them to how important we see our relationship with God and how we prioritise it for ourselves and others. I absolutely love that we're having a chance to picnic in the park after church on a few occasions this summer, so we can extend our gathered time as we Sabbath together, to eat, to talk, to play, and maybe to pray together. Now, this quote also points to the fact that Sabbath is meant to be counter-cultural. It's meant to go against the expectations of this world to produce and consume and achieve more and more and more. As Brueggemann puts it later in his book, keeping the Sabbath allows us to break this restless cycle and focus on what is truly important. Indeed, Brueggemann suggests Sabbath can be resistance to 4 areas in particular, and I really quickly want to explore these 4. Firstly, it can be resistance to the anxiety that there might not be enough. So if we remember the abundance mindset that Matt talked about a few weeks ago, Sabbath reminds us that humans are not defined by output. There is enough of what we need to go round. Secondly, Sabbath is resistance to coercion. So creating this non-negotiable time when no one can demand your work, your time, or coerce you into being constantly available. I mean, reading that one proper struck home for me. Constantly available. Third, Sabbath resists exclusivism, which basically means everyone gets to take part in Sabbath. Rest with dignity. It resists systems that divide people into insiders and outsiders, valuable and expendable. Finally, Sabbath is resistance against multitasking, the refusal to be pulled in 1,000 directions. Sabbath cultivates presence, attentiveness, and wholeness in a culture that glorifies busyness and distractions. Now, none of these are easy, and intentionally putting down physically and mentally what occupies us the rest of the time and giving the time to God might look different for all of us. But if your stopping causes you to experience a God of abundance, love, and joy, I think we're doing really well. I'm going to share what happened to me the other week, in case it's helpful. I was running late for a pickup. I was picking up a friend. Ironically, we were on our way to an overnight Christian retreat centre in a beautiful country house. But I was panicking because I thought, she's waiting for me. We might be late for dinner. And so in the car, as we got on our way there, she told me about an article that she'd read by someone who was undergoing cancer treatment, like she had just done recently. Now, this article spoke of there being two interpretations of the concept of time. One is called Chronos time, and the other was Kairos time. Now, Chronos time is all about the quantity of time, the ticking of a clock, where we think about what we can squeeze into a minute or an hour or a day. And as such, Chronos time can feel incredibly pressured. So much to do, so little time. And the article described time in this understanding as a predator that treats every passing second as a thief. But then there is the interpretation of time as kairos, not measuring time by its quantity, minutes, hours, days, but by its quality. It's this idea of quality time. You know, there's activities that we find so enjoyable that we essentially lose track of time because we're not looking at the clock. Or those conversations we have where time just seems to fly by because the people we're talking to are so engaging or fun or interested in us. That's kairos time. So this quality over quantity, when time just feels right and becomes a gift to simply dwell in rather than something to be measured. I'd suggest that Sabbath time is intended to be kairos time, quality time, spent with God and with others, resting, praying, and playing. So if you, like me, you feel that a seventh of your week feels like a lot, then by focusing on time as potential rightness with God, we might better experience Sabbath as a God-given gift, not a law to be followed. Now, I want to end with a practical activity we might help when it comes to focusing on God for Sabbath. Now, this activity has been suggested to me 3 or 4 times recently, and you know when you think maybe you need to take notice of something when it keeps coming up. So I thought I'd share it with you, but if you're an experienced master at this, then feel free to share your experience of it with me at coffee. That'd be great. It is called the Examen. The word comes from the Latin for examining or weighing, and it's from Ignatian spirituality, which is a way of relating to God that is rooted in the practice of St. Ignatius, a 16th century Spanish priest. Now, it's designed as a daily practice at the end of each day, but I thought it might fit as a handy way to frame Sabbath. There are 5 stages to this, and when you do, you can take as long as you need on each one. But I thought if it's okay, I would actually do this together this morning, and so you could experience it with me. And I'll just leave sort of 20 seconds of silence between the 5 stages. So, firstly, we become aware of God's presence. We look back on the events of the day or the week in the company of the Holy Spirit. The day may seem confusing, a blur, a jumble, a muddle. Ask God to bring clarity and understanding. So next, we review the day or week with gratitude. Gratitude is the foundation of our relationship with God. So walk through your day in the presence of God and note its joys and delights. Focus on the day's gifts. Look at what you did, the people you interacted with. What did you receive from these people? What did you give them? Pay attention to small things. Maybe the food you ate, the sights you saw, other seemingly small pleasures. God is in that detail. Pay attention to your emotions. One of St. Ignatius's great insights was that we detect the presence of the Spirit of God in the movements of our emotions. Reflect on the feelings you experienced during the day or the week. Was it boredom, elation, resentment, compassion, anger, confidence? What is God saying through these feelings? So choose one feature of the day or week and pray from that. Ask the Holy Spirit to direct you to something that God thinks is particularly important. It may involve a feeling, positive or negative. It may be a significant encounter with another person or a vivid moment of pleasure or peace. It may be something that seems rather insignificant. Look at it, pray about it, and allow prayer to arise spontaneously from your heart, whether intercession, praise, repentance, or gratitude. And finally, we look forward to tomorrow or the coming week. We ask God to give light for challenges. And we pay attention to the feelings that surface as you survey what's coming up. Are you doubtful? Cheerful? Apprehensive? Full of delighted anticipation? Allow these feelings to turn into prayer. Seek God's guidance. Ask Him for help and understanding. Pray for hope. So I hope you found that process helpful. As I say, it can be done daily for a short period if it felt like you might benefit from that. But I just want to leave you with one final quote. It's from Dan Allender in his book Sabbath, and says, "It is a day we pretend that all is well. The peace we will one day enjoy for eternity is an eternity that utters this day on our behalf." So I pray that through the practice of Sabbath, we can all experience a glimpse of what is to come, even for just one day a week.